Hey everybody, Mike Pfeiffer with Pfeiffer Hobby Supply. I posted video 10 on the ACT3, and I had one of my viewers point out that I neglected to take any video of putting up my fascia and how I do it. While I don't have any fascia to put up now, and I don't want to take down what I already have because I already have it painted and the seams sealed and everything, I am going to show you how I did it. It's real easy, and so here we go. This is going to be how to put up your fascia. Okay, the first step in doing this, and I might point out that my method involves stringers that stick out from the layout, and they're usually 1x4s because I use an L-girder benchwork type. Even if you had a flat face, you could use this method. But anyway, I use 1/8 inch masonite, and I will get into how I bend it around the curves later. But let's get started on the products, as I say, the products I use. But we're going to start out with 1/8 inch masonite. And I have Lowe's cut it into strips of 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever I need, whatever I think I need to make the height that I need from the base to the top in any given area on the layout. So we'll get into how I determine that later on. But there again, let's start with the products that I use. Okay, as I said, I have girders coming out. If you have girders coming out on the layout, for instance, like so, and say that your top board is out further than, in other words, your base, in my case 2-inch foam, is above this, but the stringer that you're setting it on is inset. The answer to that is take another piece of 1x4 of the same height and style, type, and believe me, these come in, you need to check them. They come in different widths here. But anyway, I put one up against the bottom of the 2-inch foam. I run it out to the edge of the foam where I need the fascia to be located, and I go ahead and drill a couple holes in this and screw this one to this one and just add a little stringer out to whatever distance I need it to be. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Beyond that, I've already told you that I use the 1/8 inch masonite, and I'm looking for a box of screws. I get my stuff at Lowe's. They probably have the same stuff anywhere. But this is what I use, is these lath screws. And I use them because they have a nice fat head. And if you have trouble sucking the 1/8 inch masonite into your stringer, you don't have to worry about a drywall screw or something like that pulling through the masonite. So these are the screws I use. There's no sense in getting overly long. These are 1 inches. They're number 8 by 1 inch. These are just the particular ones I use. You could use anything that you prefer if you find something different or you like the heads of them or whatever you want to do. But this is what I use. They are not like a self-drilling screw. They are just a wood type screw. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of masonite out here, and I'm going to kind of show you how I determine how high I want it to be. And I'm going to show you in this video, I know I've already done it in my update 10, but because we're doing fascia here, I'm going to show you how on this particular layout I determined how high I needed my fascia to be. Okay, in my room here, since I added this shelf, and this shelf has become an integral part of the physical layout area, you can see here that my determining factor here was I wanted it even with the countertop, but I wanted enough of it to cover a 1x4 plus the countertop material, which put me about, I generally go about 1 inch further down than my stringers. Okay, that's if I was doing a fascia that was straight all the way around the layout, I would go down about 1 inch from the bottom of the stringer. And what I would do, and I'll show you when I get over here to the other side, I leave it a little bit taller, and I'll show you what I do with that. But nevertheless, as I come around here, you can see that I have this wall inside the train room. Well, there was no need to take all of this around the corner, and I had to figure out a way to bring it up and come around and step it up to here. So I just made little hoop-de-doos in it, coming around to get up to the height that I needed. So it's nothing that's functional or non-functional. It's just easier to work with the fascia the thinner you make it. Okay, it's easier to bend. It's easier to try and hold up by yourself, and we'll get into that later. But anyway, once I got here, I have a mountain. I'm going to have a mountain here. So I just kind of had to determine a general shape. All I did to make this piece right here is determine how high did I want the mountain to be in total. Well, I want enough room to reach in that hole there to get anything if it derails, because I'm going to make a tunnel there. So that was the determining factor on how tall to make this piece right here. And I just randomly cut the edge based on, well, based on nothing. I just cut a random edge, and I'm going to make the scenery look like what the edge is. That's really what it amounts to. There's no plan in my head, really, as far as what that mountain's going to look like, but my fascia is determining what that mountain is going to look like. And I did that with a jigsaw. I measured out the piece here, how tall I needed it, cut the hole where, well, I brought it in here, put it up there, cut the hole where I needed it to be, and then I just did a random cut. Same thing here. Then this piece that goes around this corner, I made about that tall. I think it was a 24-inch piece. Anyway, I put it up there, I bent it around the corner and screwed it here and screwed it here. Well, I actually screwed it there and there. This is an afterthought, and I'll show you that. And then I did the same thing, random cut. What I did to support it, of course I have this one against the backdrop, so I screwed into the backdrop over there and then screwed in from that side to hold it in place. And then I put a 2x4 in this corner right here just to support these two corners so I don't have a bunch of wiggling and breaking loose here. So that's pretty much how I did that corner. These holes that you see in here right here are for the throttle pocket, which I'm going to mount today. Now, those of you who keep up with my channel have seen this, okay, already. But this was the first piece I put up. And I put up a piece that was 9 inches tall. I had them cut some strips of 9 for me. And I put up a piece of 9 down here. And 8 feet actually took me to this stringer. Okay? But I stopped at 7 feet and cut it off. And then I added, just as I showed you before, I added another 1x to the side of the other 1x so that I could make a joint right here. And make a joint that was smooth. So what I did is I took my 9-inch, I put it up there, and I'll do a little bit of video on that in just a second. Put the 9-inch up there, I marked it on the back along the top of the foam, and there again, I went up just an inch or so, or maybe not an inch or so, and I just random cut this edge so that my scenery can go up against the edge. Down below, I needed to cut out, well, in this particular case, I had some shelves here, already had the shelves built. My fascia was this low, okay? Well, that wasn't enough room to reach in there, so I had to go and I made a little template and I cut out these widgets in here so I could get my hands in there. Now, this is getting a little bit fancier, I guess you would say, than your normal fascia, but it was very easy to do. And this is what I'm going to tell you. Once you put up a piece of fascia, you generally, at least I generally, have to put it up and take it down at least once or twice, because I make a full-size piece, 9 inches tall in this case, put it up there, screwed it in place, then I took it off. Well, then I marked the top, and then I cut this then I took it off, cut this random edge and cut these whoop-de-doos out of it, put it back. Then I had to take it off again because I forgot to cut the hole for the main layout switch. But let me do a little video here on how I put it up there and mark it. I know it's a little bit difficult to understand, so let me do a demo. Okay, here's a little better shot of the masonite that I use. This might be thicker than 1/8 inch. I don't know exactly what it is, but it looks a little thicker than the other stuff that I had. But nevertheless, I use the stuff that's rough on one side, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But when I get ready to do my bends, I soak this with water and I let it sit for about 15 minutes before I try and make the bend. It softens up the masonite just a tiny bit and allows you to bend it around a corner. But let me show you how I mark this stuff, okay? Okay, what we're going to do here is a little pretending. We're going to pretend that we have no fascia here, and this is the top of the layout, hence my 2 inches. What I do is I take whatever height I have determined of my masonite, and that is, like I say, is determined because I go an inch below my stringers, or whatever it is you're trying to cover up down here. I go an inch below that, and however far it comes up is how far it comes up. So if I have it this high, what I do is I screw it up there where I need it to be with the bottom level, or the top if you have a level edge, and I go right up against the foam. Excuse me, I'm having trouble holding all this, and I just go along the back side and I mark it along the straight edge, okay? And this mark doesn't really mean anything. It's nothing more than a reference line so that I know where to do my random cutting along the top edge here, which I have a spider crawling on my hand here. Anyway, I know where to cut my random edge and how far I need this random edge to go up, because I pay attention to where the fascia is when I put it up there. If I had this piece here and I was marking it, and say I don't have anything handy, but let's pretend this is a mountain, okay, or a hill. Well, then I would need a piece that's taller. First of all, I would come along the back side. Well, let's see here. Let me change ends here. I would come along the back side here with my mark until I got to this point, and I would do my random cut up and over my little hillside here and back down again, like I did on the mountain that I showed you down there on the other end. So that when the purpose of pre-mounting it is so that you can mark all these terrains, all these obstacles, terrains, mountains, hills, whatever. So you know, if you have an idea where some are going to go, so that they're there when you put the fascia on, then you can build the scenery up to it. A lot of guys, I think, make the mistake of doing their scenery first and then putting their fascia on after. Then you can certainly go along and mark it, but then you've got to go back in and blend that. I prefer to blend my scenery to my fascia as I do the scenery work. So basically, that's how I determine how I mark it and everything. So let me show you another thing that I do. Okay, I covered this a minute ago, but the problem I had here was I had to go down and I had to go much lower in this particular area, because right over there, up underneath here, let me see here. Let me see if I get a picture of it. There is a 1x4 that was the front edge, right here, that was the front edge of the layout board. Okay? I had to get down low enough to cover that. And you can see it's a little less than an inch here. But my point being, if I back up again, and if I get the camera where I can use it, I had to come down here. Whoops. I had to come down here. I went straight as I could because I need to get to these cabinets under here, and the level of this is a little bit higher than the level of the 1x4 in the back. Okay? So I came around, and you can see where I dipped down to fully cover the 1x4 that was right by the edge. So you can get by with 1x4s that are in the back there, simply because your view angle is something like this, a slope. But when the thing's out by the front of the board, it shows. So anyway, to get to the point, I had to cut this one here really wide, not to mention the fact that I've got a 2-inch riser here, so my scenery doesn't look too steep. I went ahead and brought this up, and then I came, if I come around here, kind of crowded to take the video, but anyway, if I come around here, you can see I no longer needed that because I'm out away from the benchwork, so I sloped it back up to what it was over here on the other side, and I went on around the corner but I left a lot up here on top because I knew I had this 2% incline here. So my scenery, if I get back here, and I'm just going to use a bridge for instance here, my scenery will only have a slope like that, even though the risers look high when they're sitting on top of the foam. This will be filled with newspapers and what have you, and then the scenery will be built on top of this, and it may include a ditch, a canyon, or whatever, but that's beside the point. The point is, I put this piece up just like I did the others. I had to put a seam in it here, and when I put a seam in it here, it wanted to be straight. So what I did is I went behind, let me try and get under there, and I put a 1x back in the back, just cut high enough to clear the foam at the top, and I went ahead and screwed one side to the piece I had already put on. Then when I got to the other side, I pulled out on this corner, on these two, where these two pieces meet, and I went ahead and put a couple more screws in the other side to bring in, or pull out actually, this piece of masonite so that I could continue on around this corner. And what I do usually, and let me try and get up here. Let me find a place that's good. Here's a place right here, and I'm sure that you can't see down in there. But when I look down in here from the right angle, I can see where that stringer is. You could also, what I have done in the past, is mark on the foam where the center of the stringer is, so that when you get to the point you're going to put in the screw to hold the fascia, and you don't need a lot of screws, you know where that stringer is. You can look straight down on it, and you can run your screw in. And if you need, you can measure how far down this is. I know I've got 2 inches, I've got a couple inches here, got 2 inches of foam, and this is probably right in the top of the stringer somewhere, close to the top of the stringer. So anyway, to get on with the story, I ran that on around, and here I ran into a particular problem that most of you probably may or may not run into, and you'll just have to figure it out on your own. But my piece was longer than what needed to go back and attach to the door frame. So what I did is I actually opened this door. In my particular case, like I said, I opened my door all the way up, and you can see there's a slot back there. I ran the masonite through the slot, and then I just guesstimated at what I needed to, it was run through here, and I just guesstimated at what I needed to cut it at. Otherwise, you could do some fancy measuring and probably get it to work somehow. I guess I would have to leave that up to you. But anyway, what happens when you get done, after you've taken it up and down a couple of times, is you wind up with it cut just the way you want it cut. You have it covering the things you want it to cover and not covering the things that you don't want to cover, which is the case here. And there is a lot of fascia here that's cut. So this is maybe a little more complex job than a lot of you may want to do, but this is how I do it. The next thing I'm going to show you is what I do with the masonite to get it around the corner. Okay, I happen to have this piece that I cut off the top, which was probably the piece that I cut off the top of here, laying there in the garage, and you can see that I took it out in the front, and you can do this anywhere. And I soaked where potentially we would know it needs to be bent, and you could actually wet the whole thing and it really wouldn't matter. But nevertheless, I usually do it where it's going to be bent, and I just soaked it with the hose for a little while. And I haven't been sitting here too long. I mean, I've only been staring at this for about 2 minutes. But if you let it set for about 10 or 15 minutes, it does give it a little bit of softness in the back. And of course, this is on the rough side, because you're going to have the smooth side out. But even if it doesn't help you bend it, which I think it does, in my opinion, when you bend it and it's wet like that, and after it sits there and you have it screwed up for, say, the night, you screwed it up there and you left it for the night, when you go to take it back off, it pretty much almost holds that shape. Okay? And after you've had it up on the layout for a year or so, it definitely holds the shape, and you can take it up and down as needed. And you can always go back and find your holes, your reference holes, to put it back up. But anyway, let me see if I can get the camera on a stand, and I'll just bend this around a fictitious corner. Okay, here we have our wet section. And we're going to make an attempt to bend it into this corner here, which is, I don't know what the radius is there, but it's not overly sharp, but it matches what I had there. And I'm risking barking up my new paint job. But what I would do is I would stick it up there, like so, something like this. And I would just go ahead and shove it back into this corner, like so. And you're going to have to hold it in place, and I'll show you how I do that. And then once you get it bent to that configuration, and now it's all the way back tight against my other piece, and it would be back against stringers in your case. And I go ahead and know where my stringer is. I have my glue gun, or my screw gun handy, and I zip a screw into it and I let it sit. Okay? And that's pretty much all there is to it. We're going to go out here in the garage and we're going to do a little bend test on this. Okay, I've never attempted this before, and I'm going to do this with the risk of it slapping me in the face. But this will show you whether wetting the back makes it a little bit more flexible or not. So anyway, here we go, and you're just going to have to keep your eye on it and make your determination when it snaps. Okay, that's wet. Let's see what we can do on a non-wet. You could obviously see there, or at least I could obviously see, and you can see that you had separation of the layers, but you could obviously see that it was wanting to make a kink instead of make a curve with the non-wetted. So anyway, that's why I prefer to do it. That's a demonstration of wetting it and why I think it needs to be wet. And I hope that helps you. And now I'm going to try to show you how the different methods that I've used to hold it up when you're doing it with a one-man job. Okay, I have told you that pretty much everything I know about putting it up. Let me just show you real quick here how I hold it up when I'm here by myself. What I usually do is I take a couple pieces of 1x4, 2x2, it doesn't matter what it is, whatever you have. And I build one of these. Drill a couple holes here, and then what I do is I take this thing and I measure down my 1 inch or whatever I want it to be, and if need be, make a couple of these and put them on your stringers or your fascia. You could build these this way if you had a flat if your sub-row bed was flat, or your bench work was flat. Sorry, I lost my mind there. But if your bench work was flat in the front, you could build a thing like this. But nevertheless, you have to have something sticking out to rest this thing on. I also have I have also taken and put a piece on the outside so that it doesn't slip off the edge if need be. Sure, it takes a couple pieces of wood, maybe a little bit of cutting, but it is a way to make something that will hold it up. Now, what I do is I take and I put this up there, obviously with a couple holes drilled in it in the appropriate place. Measure your 1 inch here, put a line on here, or 2 inches, whatever you want it to hang down, and then put this up there and screw this in place so that your 1 inch mark, your fascia sits on your 1 inch mark, is what I'm trying to say. You can do this, you can make 2, you can make 3, however many you need, and you can put one in any particular location. Like I say, you may have to modify it to get it to fit where you want it to go, but it's all about making a little, well, what would you say, a hook or something for the fascia to sit on while you're working on it. If it's a one-man deal, you can't get somebody around to hold it up for you, okay? Even on the curves this works, because what you do is you walk in the room with your 8-foot piece, you kind of you grab a hold of the end and you bend your 8-foot piece around, you push it kind of back into the corner and you set it on one over here, and you set the other part on the 90-degree angle where your bend is in the corner, and you've kind of got it in place where you need it to be. What I normally do is I start, and I was telling you about holding up that little piece that I had there. What I normally do is I get it where I want it on the end that I'm holding up, and then I have the other end supported on something. I've even used this tripod that this camera is sitting on to hold it up. You can use anything that's adjustable to hold it up or making the bracket. But nevertheless, what I'm getting at is I get one end where I want it, and I screw that end in. Well, I know my bench work is level, so then all I have to do is I have to go with midway in my piece, rest a small spirit level on it, and just get it to where the level is level. Then I know it's going to be good around the layout. And then I go ahead and I put a screw in the middle. Then what I do is I go to my corner, I take my corner and I push it back as far as I can push it to where it goes where I want it to go. Doesn't have to be all the way against your sub-row bed. It can be out, and you can build that out or whatever you want to do. But the corner has to be what you want. When you push it back in there, then go to your last spot around your 90 degrees, know where your stringer is, and zip you a screw in there, and you're off and running. But that's how I hold it up while I'm doing it. Really, in all honesty, I can't think of anything else to tell you about it. Once I get done, let me show you one other thing that I did have to do, though. Okay? Okay, I had already had this piece down several times, and I just didn't want to take it down again because of this seam that I had over here. It doesn't like being bent right there, so when I had it where I wanted it and it looked good, I didn't want to remove that again. But what I had forgotten to do is mark where I wanted my panels, my UP5, whatever Digitrax called them, but your UP5 panels or your fascia panels for your DCC. I had forgotten to cut those in. Well, fortunately, I have a Dremel vibrating saw. This masonite is really hard to cut with a knife. You can do it. It takes you forever to cut a square hole in it with a knife. But anyway, my vibrating saw was successful in cutting the hole sufficient to put that through and mount that. I suppose that you could use any type of tool you wanted. You could use a rotary saw. You could use a Dremel tool with some kind of a cutting bit on it. There's any number of things. But as you can see, as I went to the other one, that one I just showed you was the first one, and I got considerably better with a different bit on the thing at cutting them. But anyway, that's the one thing that I forgot to do, but you can always make cuts in it after the fact if you have a tool that can make those kind of cuts. I'm just going to pass on one little more piece of information, a little cheat that I do, and that'll be it. Okay, the one thing I forgot to tell you is here's my little template that I made for cutting out my holes for my fascia panels, which is no big deal. But the cheat that I was going to tell you is, in my time of model railroading, I've run across tiles. Of course, I model Southwest, so I've run across these ceramic tile that, of course, I had to buy, because that's a horny toad, and the Zia symbol for our flag, and just an Indian pottery piece that I thought was very cool. And what I do with these is I either hang them on the wall, but more importantly, what I do, and I have, you saw the Santa Fe Railroad one that I have, a little round brass emblem. If I have, down the road, years from now, if I change my mind on what I'm going to do here, I take and I'll stick one of these over this hole. Instead of replacing this piece of fascia, I just add a decoration to the front of the fascia to cover the hole. It just saves you from having to build a whole new piece. The other thing I was going to tell you is my gap here and any mistake holes that I've made, which there was one here that you can't see right now, but any holes where I put screws that didn't hit the stringer, I use wall putty, and just I use a putty knife, and I put it down the crack, let it dry, and sand it off, and then paint. So you can touch up small holes with that putty. And for today, I guess that's about it. Okay, guys, I hope that explains how I did it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope it helps you do your fascia. This is just how I do it. Many different types of fascia are out there, and guys are doing it many different ways. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.